What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pub Sports Radio and the DFS Picks and Predictions Show. For those of you guys who are saying, Brady, by God, you look awful. What happened to you? It's not Brady. Brady's going to be taking the week off this week, but he will be back next week. I'm going to be your host this week, Uncle Weezy. Be sure to tune in with us as we do this every 7 o'clock Eastern time. Me, Luke, Brady, and Monk break down the upcoming card from a DFS perspective, and we give our predictions on the fights as well. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to Pub Sports so you don't miss out on all the content throughout the week. I'm always here with Monk and Luke. Monk, what's up, my man? You ready to break down this card?
Absolutely. What's up, Luke? What is up, Weezy? 15 fights to get to this week. We got several categories to go over, and man, there are some interesting dogs on this card, some very interesting lines, a couple of wide spots. So we'll do our best to break it down for you, give the best plays of the week right here.
Absolutely. That's what we do every week. And Luke, how you feeling about this card, man? You fired up for UFC 271?
Yeah, it's a fun one, man. And obviously any pay-per-view card, you're getting a lot more public money coming in too. And we got a 15 fight slate too. So we talk about it every single week, the best ways, to go about it and try to be different. And obviously you have a plethora of options to choose from to be different this week. So I think it should be a fun one. I'm really interested to see your guys' takes on all the different segments we run through.
Absolutely. And as we always do on this show, we kind of break down these fights from a DFS perspective. We give you the fight to target, the fight to fade, the fighter to fade, the favorite dog, the favorite GPP play, the favorite cash play, the best value play, the favorite dart throw, and our quick picks at the end and our lineups. And we're going to start this show like we always do with the fight to target. And Monk, why don't we start with you, man? Which fight are you targeting from a DFS perspective this week?
Sounds good. I'm going, one of the first couple fights on the card, the third fight, actually, Jacob Malkoun, AJ Dobson. Now, while these guys do not have, in fact, one guy's just a Dana White Contender Series fight, no UFC fights. Malkoun is 1-1 in the UFC. We're at the $8,000 and $8,200 price range here. But what really interests me is Jacob Malkoun's output, 5.53 raw Draftkings points per minute, outscores his opponent by 4 whole points a minute. He is coming in about 1,000 over his average salary, but you're getting a good value. He scored 114.5 points when he won, and when he lost, guys, he gave up 127.8. So there are some points flying around in Jacob Malkoun fights. On the other side, AJ Dobson, as I said, does not have a UFC fight, but if you were scoring his contender fight with DraftKings points, which did not happen, he would have scored 8.90 points per minute and giving up 0.83 a minute. That's a differential of over 8. He would have scored 128 in his win. I just like the explosive opportunity here for a lot of points. I have this as my, I think, second or third highest inside the distance odds, meaning I think it's definitely going to finish inside the distance. Anything could happen on this fight. I'm going to be pretty decently exposed to both sides of Malkoun and Dobson.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more with you there, Monk. I'm on the exact same fight for a lot of the same reasons. I feel like this fight is going to be one where the winner scores huge and the loser scores really poorly, because if Dobson wins, if you haven't seen this guy fight yet, he is absolutely terrifying. He fights like he's double parked. He shaves ass in like 30 seconds and then he leaves. So if he hits you square, you're going to sleep. And then, we saw what Malkoun did. And this is funny because with Malkoun here, you've got a guy who's basically had almost the exact same opponent now 3 times in a row. A really powerful striker that usually finishes fights early. And he had Hawes in the first fight, got melted in the first 30 seconds. Didn't land a strike, didn't take a forward step, looked like absolute garbage. And then he gets another explosive fighter in Abdul Razak Al Hassan, comes out there, puts on his wrestling singlet, and gets like 8 takedowns, and I believe over 11 or 12 minutes of top time control. So either one of these guys who loses this fight probably won't be scoring well, but at 8,000 or 8,200, whoever wins this fight is probably going to be scoring well over 10x and looking pretty good in your lineup. Luke, you got a different fight for us here to target?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of giving the cop-out answer, but going with the big boys and Lewis and Tuivasa, one of the best inside the distance lines on the slate at above 85% implied to finish. Lewis, 85% finish rate in his W's, has been finishing 75% of his losses. Tuivasa, 92% finish rate in his W's and has been finished in 66% of his losses. Obviously, no real in-depth breakdown here. Lewis isn't an output machine by any means, but at the same time, Tuivasa is just a guy that fights in a style that forces action, and it wouldn't really be very predictive for him to fight intelligently, just leg kick, stick, move. Even once again, I think it would be smart for him to do that. He's just not a guy who's going to do that. So I think he's going to give Derrick Lewis the exact type of fight he needs to succeed. He's going to come forward. He's going to let his hands go. And as a result, I think he probably gets knocked out. But nonetheless, I do think the leg kicking component is still interesting, though, because we have seen Lewis struggle with some of that in the past. And if he can debilitate Lewis early, I think that definitely opens up tie for knockout. So I don't necessarily think it's 100% one-way traffic here on Lewis. I do think there is some merit to Ty, who is going to bang. It's just one of those fights where I think we're probably going to see, a first-round knockout. Either guy finds the optimal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I looked earlier on DraftKings and saw that the fight doesn't go to decision for Lewis Tuivasa is something like minus 650 or something. Is that true?
Yeah, it's over 600. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're getting anybody in that fight, whoever wins is probably going to score at least 90 to 100 points. I mean, it would be really hard to picture anybody doing anything besides that. If that one went to decision, it would be absolutely shocking. Wanted to shout out the chat here, you guys. We got David Dennett in the room saying, "What's up? Big oi to all you, and let's talk some DK." We got Sean V in the room, Weezy 2024. We got the Grateful Dude saying it's a great card from a betting perspective. We got Raw Torque in here. We got Hype MMA. We got Dirty Reg 22. We got Rob Lawrence. We got Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. 15 fights on the card, says Dirty Reg, but I think we got 7-8 leg parlays in us this card. This is one of those cards that if you are a parlay guy, man, I'll tell you, there are some things sticking out. But the next thing that we got to talk about is a fight to fade. And why don't you kick it off for us, Luke, here? Which fight are you going to be staying away from on this slate?
Yeah, I'm going Arlovski, Vanderaa, third worst ITD line on the card at sub 45% implied, which I actually think is somewhat short and should probably be worse, to be completely honest. Arlovski's been a decision machine in recent years. 8 of his last 10 fights have hit the cards, and he's now kind of more of adapted point fighter at this point in his career at 43 years old. We have seen a healthy number of finishes in Vanderaa fights over the last, handful of years, but the 3 most recent ones do have some context. He puts Hunsucker away, who we all know is not a UFC caliber fighter. Then he gets mauled on the ground by Spivak and Romanov, but I still don't think that Vanderaa is much of a pure hitter by heavyweight standards. And Arlovski is obviously not a guy historically out there going to wrestle at all. Sure, it's still heavyweight. Anything can happen. But I do think Arlovski does do a pretty good job of slowing fights down in the aggregate and limiting overall damage, rolling with shots. And at the end of the day, Arlovski is by far the best technical fighter that Jared Vanderaa has fought. So if we're getting a technical kickboxing match, I think Vanderaa is going to struggle there, but it's one of those fights, obviously in DraftKings, we like our takedowns, all that stuff, our big knockout upside. You got 2 big boys. It's heavyweight, general consensus, it finishes, but not this type of archetype. I think it's kind of more of your lower to moderate level pitter patter volume based striking decision on a 15 fight slate. That's just not going to do it.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. I mean, anybody who's been playing DraftKings for the last couple of years know that the Arlovski fights are not high-scoring fights, unless, of course, he gets knocked out in the first round by, actually submitted by Aspinall. But Monk, what do you got for us for a fight to fade here?
I'm gonna go with, and this is just for GPP kind of notes. I'm using one of these fighters later in a decent cash note here, but I'm going to go with Bobby Green and Nasrat Haqparast I love Bobby Green here, just for the fact that I think this is going to go to decisions. Only 7 of their last 10 fights have gone to decision. Bobby Green did score a knockout over Ali Aquinta, as everyone saw last time. Very impressive, but against, how much was Ali Aquinta really in there? I'm not taking away anything from Bobby Green. Nasrat Haqparast got knocked out by Drew Dober and he beat Joaquim Silva via knockout. But that was a few fights ago. I just tend to think with these guys' takedown defense, both, Bobby Green well over 70% and Bobby Green barely over 70, Nasrat at 78% takedown defense. I think this is going to kind of stay on the feet. I do not expect it to finish inside the distance. Bobby Green does score decently well when he wins, 92 points. So it's not anything crazy, but it's definitely not low. Nasrat scores 82 points over 5 wins on average. He does give up 95, but Bobby Green only gives up 68. So if Nasrat's going to win this fight, I mean, Bobby Green's given up 68 points on average over 7 fights. That is 0 points, basically. Nobody's making the optimal lineup fighting Bobby Green and winning. Nasrat, does give up 95, but is that going to make it to an optimal on a 15-fight slate? I don't know. So I'm going to be fading Bobby Green and Nasrat, especially in the GPP type tournaments.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you on this one. I mean, it's the worst fight doesn't go to decision line on the slate, and it makes it a great spot to fade. And we know that Nasrat Haqparast doesn't wrestle at all. I think he might have attempted 3 takedowns in his entire UFC tenure, and I know he has gotten 0. So, yeah, when you can't get takedowns, when it's most likely to be a striking battle, and both of these guys are incredibly defensively responsible. That's the worst part about this fight. I think Bobby Green's striking defense is north of 60%. And Nasrat Haqparast's striking defense is above 70%. So with 2 really good defensive fighters, there's really only a chance that one of them wrestles offensively. It's on a 15-fight slate. It's a pretty easy one to fade, in my opinion, as well. Next, we will go to the fight to fade, and I'll kick us off here, or the fighter to fade, I'm sorry. I'll kick us off here, and I'm going to go with Jared Cannonier. I actually am picking Cannonier to win this fight, but I don't know if you guys had heard this, but evidently Brunson said yesterday he plans only on fighting 2 more times, and that he wants to spend more time with his family, and that he's still healthy, and he's concerned about his health going forward, so he doesn't want to fight too long. And with the new Derrick Brunson that we've seen after he's moved to Sanford MMA, we've seen a guy who has went from being this loose cannon that's just out there slinging hooks, trying to knock people out in the first round, to somebody that's been very defensively responsible by showing a change to his offensive game by putting the wrestling first. And I know that Jared Cannonier has shown excellent takedown defense so far in the middleweight division. In 5 fights, his takedown defense has been 85% at 185. So I think he's doing very well, and he's able to keep fights on the feet. And he's so strong that even when you do get him down, he's very difficult to keep down. But I do know that we have seen Brunson be very defensively responsible now by wrestling much more. And I know that in order for Cannonier to be effective, he's going to need to be out in the center of the cage, switching stances, throwing those heavy kicks, trying to knock out Brunson. I just don't know if Brunson's going to wind up obliging him. And I think that even though Jared Cannonier probably does win this fight, he probably does win enough minutes on the feet and stuffing up takedowns to kind of like grind out a greasy decision. I don't think he'll be scoring well in that decision. And especially in that mid 8,000 price range, there's some much higher upside options that I'd rather go with. So I'm going to be fading Jared Cannonier. What about you guys? Luke, who are you going to be fading?
All right, so hot take. This is going to piss a lot of people off, but this is my hot take of the week. I'm actually going Adesanya at 9.2, obviously fading the main event favorite, one of the best strikers in the UFC. Definitely a hot take there. However, Izzy only has the 9th best ITD line on the slate at roughly 35% implied, with 5 fighters priced below him with better perceived chances to finish. When Izzy hasn't finished in his 5-round fights, he scored 85 points, 49 points, 82 points, and then 117, which was against Gastelum. You can make the conclusion, based on the first outcome, he's going to finish Whittaker again, but there's also some conjecture in there too as well with the odds makers. This fight is about 50-50 in terms of the over 4.5. We're not seeing the total at 2.5, not at 3.5. So it's actually leading towards the over here. And if Izzy does not finish on this type of a slate, he is not going to make the optimal lineup, as he's not a historic output machine. He's not a guy who's wrestling. There's also the argument that even if he does finish, he's still, maybe he's not a lock for the optimal lineup with the amount of finishing potential on this card. No fight is worse than 40% implied to finish. So with it being a 15 fight public pay-per-view slate, I just think this is an interesting route to go, to be different, as I would assume we're going to see a ton of public ownership from Adesanya.
Yeah, love the hot take there, and he is a striker first. And, and if you're not landing knockdowns and if you're not getting knockouts, it's very hard especially in 3-round fights. This is obviously a 5-round fight, but it's really hard to return value, especially in 3-round fights. So I could see laying off Adesanya getting a little bit different, and it's not as big of a risk on a 15 fight slate as it would be in other weeks. What about you, Monk? What are you going with?
Man, I thought I was the one with the hot take, but instead I'm going to serve as to back up Luke's take, man. I also had Israel Adesanya as my biggest fighter to fade here on this card. $9,200. I mean, it sounds crazy, but Izzy, you are paying up for him. His average salary is $8,900. His average DraftKings points per win, 88.26. Now, that's decent, but it's nowhere near as big as I thought it was going to be, or as large of a number as I thought that was going to be. And he has a lot of 5-round fights, like at least 5. I don't know if somebody can back me up here, but at least 5. So he is going the distance in some of these fights as well. And you heard Luke rattle off those numbers. I mean, just in his last 5, 84, 102 against Costa, 2nd-round finish, 49 against Romero, 106 when he beat Whittaker. So if you think Izzy beats Whittaker inside the distance, I guess it's a decent play, but I personally think this one could go the distance. I personally also think Izzy sticks right alongside his consistency and does not score well enough to make the optimal lineup. Like you said, Uncle Weezy, he is pretty much, as everyone knows, just a striker. If you take out his knockdown points, that leaves him with him scoring, 1.77 DraftKings points per minute. And I know, that's like taking knockdown points away from Derrick Lewis. I mean, what would that number be, like 0.16 or something like that? But I'm just saying he doesn't do, he has 0.0 takedown points per. He's no takedown points in the UFC career. Hardly any control points, hardly any reversal points. All he's going to do to put up points is strike. And in this modern era of DraftKings, where you are rewarded for lots of takedowns and most of the time your ground game, I just don't see Israel Adesanya scoring very well here. So I will be fading him, not down to 0, but not as high. I'll probably be under the field here.
Yeah, it's always difficult to fade the main event, especially when it's the only 5-round fight on a 15-fight card.
And
but
last week the 5-rounder did not make the optimal, so now we're back on pace for every. But still, I don't know if that was going to happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke brought up an excellent point. I mean, when you look at the amount of combinations of fights that could finish inside the distance, and the worst inside the distance prop is the implied probability around 40%. You said, Luke, around plus 150, right? Yeah, I mean, there are going to be a lot of fights that finish. So, yeah, you got to pick the right ones, and you got to pick the high upside ones. And now we are going to go to our favorite dog. Luke, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, this is a really tough one because just in general, I don't think it's a slate that has a ton of general dog merit, to be honest. I think it's kind of a chalk rolly type of card. But from a DraftKings perspective, I'm actually going to say Hernandez at 7.7. I do think it's a reasonably tough style matchup for him, but he's put up over 90 plus points in 4 of his 5 UFC wins. On the other side, Moicano has been KO'd in his last 3 losses and has shown, some poor tendencies when guys have kind of crashed the pocket on him, which we have seen from Hernandez in the past. So I don't really think that Hernandez can win extended minutes standing or on the ground with Moicano, but he is very live to nuke him here. And I think if he does, he is going to make the optimal at 7.7.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at him as well. I'm going to go out on a limb here and give you probably the public DraftKings dog this week in Derrick Brunson, because the guy's been cashing so many times as an underdog. He's got this huge wrestling upside. But I think it's a really tough matchup for him, with all that being said. But, we talked about the health concerns, and the most comfortable I usually feel, I know I had Maximov on my team last week, and just knowing that the wrestler is going to wrestle. In my opinion, when you're getting them less than 8,200, it's a no-brainer, especially for like a cash lineup pick. You're going to have to free up salary somewhere. And if you can find a wrestler that you know is going to commit to the wrestling, it's as safe as an underdog pick as you can go, unless you're getting, like, for instance, somebody that's in a main event that's an underdog that you think is probably going to go with a full 5. Then you've got a really nice floor as well. But yeah, I mean, Cannonier's got serious power, and I looked up the power numbers for him at middleweight specifically, and he's landing a knockdown on 2% of the significant strikes that he's landing. So he's got a ton of power, but I do know that because of that power and because Derrick has been so defensively responsible and willing to go to the wrestling, that I think that he can, at least make this a really greasy fight, and we'll have a decent floor here if he doesn't get nuked in the first 30 seconds. So that's going to be my dog of the week. Monk, what are you going with for a dog this week?
Well, once again, I will back up one of you guys in Weezy. I also had Derrick Brunson. Like you said, he is the safest dog play of the week. And personally, I think this is kind of close to a 50-50 fight. In fact, Computer Monk thinks it's like 55-45 for Brunson. So that is who he's picking. I'll just back you up with a few stats here. You're getting Brunson $600 cheaper than his average salary, so you're getting a deal on him. Where was I? Oh, Brunson scores 4.13 points per minute. That is the third highest rate on the card by fighters that have at least 3 UFC fights. He has given up only 1.88. That is the fourth highest number on the card. In a good way, the fourth best number, I should say, with over 2-point differential. Scores 105 points when he wins. So if you think Brunson's going to win, you've got yourself a darn good deal here, coming in that cheap under his average salary. Like you said, I think he also has a very high ceiling. Where were this? Here we go. Let's see. Brunson averages 1 takedown point per minute. So 1 DraftKings points in takedowns every single minute that he's been fighting. Jared Cannonier actually gives up 0.7 points, takedown points per minute. So that is the 17th lowest number on the card. He is nowhere near that top tier, as far as not giving up points to takedown specifically. Even his control time, he is the 15th lowest control time given up as far as DraftKings points go, at 0.39 per minute. I just like Derrick Brunson here. I love his upside, and I love his salary as well. I think this is going to be a great fight. Another one I'm going to be pretty heavily exposed to, I think, both sides, but probably more Derrick Brunson.
Yeah, it's just a great fight with title implications as well. And I mean, I'm really excited just to see that fight, even not from a DraftKings perspective, because these are two damn good middleweights, a great striker versus grappler matchup. It's going to be a good one. But now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give you guys our best GPP play. And this is going to be like a high upside, preferably somewhat lower owned play that will, high ceiling, not really worried about the floor. I'll kick us off here. I'm going with AJ Dobson here. AJ Dobson is only $8,200, so you could get him in there, and he's going to free up some salary for you to get some of those guys that are above the 9,000 range or the high 8,000 range that you like. There's definitely potential for a finish inside of 60 seconds here with Dobson. We've seen Malkoun finish inside of 60 seconds once in 2 fights in the UFC. And then if you've ever seen Dobson fight, you know that a under 60-second finish is absolutely live, and it frees up that salary to go get the high price guys. So you want to find somebody that does have that nice high upside that's likely to finish, but that you don't have to break the bank on. And then for me this week, that's going to be Dobson. Monk, who are you going to be going with for a GPP play this week?
This is a very chalky play and a very high-priced play as well, but I will find a way to work Casey O'Neill into a lot of my lineups. Now, at first I was like, she'll probably be very high owned, but honestly, I don't know. There's a narrative going around that Roxanne has the tools to beat her. I'm not here to argue or dispute that. I'm here to back this up with DraftKings stats. So, I mean, I'm going to be making space for Casey O'Neill because she was the number 1 DraftKings player in all of the entire UFC in 2021. And it wasn't even very close. She made the optimal lineup 3 times. The only other fighter to do that was Ricky Simone. 3 out of 3. She is coming in pretty expensive over her average salary, but I think that's what's going to keep her pretty low owned. And honestly, I mean, 126.8 points per win. She scores the highest amount on the card at 6.23, gives up only 2.37, which is about average, but that's a differential of almost 4 points a minute. Has the best value on the card, averaged over 3 fights, the highest ceiling, a decent floor. I mean, she's scoring almost 4 points a minute just in striking. 1.28 points per minute in takedowns and over a point per minute in control time. And she's fighting, I got all the love in the world for Roxanne Modafferi. I hope she has a happy retirement. I think she's already 1 foot out the door. I think Casey O'Neill still has a lot of room to grow, but I do not think this is the fight that's going to really put her in her, that's going to present much of a challenge. So I'm going Casey O'Neill. I like Casey O'Neill by finish, and I'm interested to hear, actually what Luke has to say about that. He did give a pretty juicy line while we were talking beforehand, if he wants to talk about that for just a half second. But I'm going to go with Casey O'Neill in this one. I'm going to pay up for her a decent chunk, and I'm going to avoid some of the other $9,000 fighters in that range.
Absolutely. All right, Luke, what do you got for us, man? Who are you taking?
Well, yeah, just piggybacking off of Monk real quick because I don't want to leave him hanging, but I think O'Neill by KO TKO plus 400 plus 450 is an interesting poke. It's obviously a tough one to make because Roxy, I don't think, has been finished since like Jessica Rakoczy. So it's been a second, but it's like one of these things where, a bit of a writing on the wall, despite, Roxy's wrestling background. She can get put on her back. She ate a ton of strikes from Tyler Santos, but I think O'Neill is going to be a girl who's going to come forward. She's going to let her hands go. She's talking about she's trying to knock this girl out. I think she can finish her standing. I think she has the potential to finish her in the guard. We have seen, Roxy get dropped and hurt multiple times. Roxy also only defends distance strikes, I believe, at 52% to boot. So yeah, I mean, you're playing into a little bit of some unknowns there, but from a general value-based perspective, I do think O'Neill has the potential to finish. So there's that. But for my GPP play, I like Carlos Ulberg at 8.9K, and I like him for a ton of reasons this week. He's got the best inside the distance line on the slate at roughly 60% implied, and is only the 8th most expensive fighter on the slate. He's fighting a guy in Charant who really just does a whole lot of nothing, if I'm being completely honest, and he's kind of reliant on meme guillotines or clipping guys. Obviously, Ulberg's last performance against Kennedy will probably stick out in a lot of people's minds as, he just pretty much emptied the tank, couldn't put the guy away, gassed, got finished. But I also feel pretty good about saying that Fabio Charant does not have the durability of Kennedy and Zechiku. And Kennedy is also incredibly long for the division. The guy's got an 83-inch reach, so it's not necessarily the easiest to get on him historically. I just think there's levels on the feed here between the speed, power, athleticism, technical acumen. I think he puts Homeboy away, and I think he puts him out in the first round. Obviously, you're not going to get any of the wrestling potential from Ulberg per se, but it's one where I think he's got even that 60-second knockout bonus upside in this fight as well. I just don't like what I've seen from Charant. So I think you're also potentially getting a decent leverage against the field because of the last result. Guy only has a handful of pro fights, 1 game log. Not a lot of people know anything about him. People might not know much about the matchup. But at 8.9 for his upside, instead of paying up for, depending on, how you're going to go about it, but getting 8.9 on someone who has just as much upside as anybody does in terms of scoring in that 9K range. I love Ulberg at 8.9.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's obvious you brought that up. I mean, you want to talk about opposite ends of the durability spectrum. It would be Fabio Charant and Kennedy and Chekwu. They're at complete opposite ends of it. Monk, what do you got for us here?
Let's see. Are we on cash play?
We are. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We're on the favorite cash play here.
All right, I will go ahead and do. I kind of said I was going to fade the fight earlier, except for one fighter. I like this fighter specifically for cash, and that is Bobby Green. Very consistent as far as his score goes. Like I said, I'll try not to reuse too many stats here. 92.54 points per win. He's got a pretty low standard deviation, meaning when he wins, he generally stays within about, 13 points or so of that number. So that is a pretty consistent fighter as far as I'm concerned, has a positive differential. You're getting him at about $400 over his average salary. So you are paying up, especially after that Al Iaquinta fight, but you're not paying up a ton, just a few $100. The $8,400 fight does win 50% of the time, while the $7,800 fight only wins 45% of the time. And Bobby Green did make the optimal lineup twice out of 2 fights last year. So 100% of both of his fights, he was on the optimal lineup. I like him a lot here for cash. I don't necessarily think he finished, as we discussed. I think you said it was Vegas's lowest line fight to finish inside the distance. It's one of my 3 or 4th lowest. But I do like Bobby Green's scoring consistency. I do think he beats Nasrat Haqparast, and even if it goes all 3, I'm probably going to be comfortable with his score. If he gets 80 to 90, even more than that for cash. So I'm going to pick Bobby Green here.
Yeah, Bobby Green is one fighter that I really think has a great chance to win this week. And that's how on those cash lineups, you definitely want to get as many winners in there as you can. So that's a great call, man. My cash play this week is going to be Ronnie Lawrence. I'm high on this kid, whenever you're playing DraftKings, you want these guys that can grapple. And this kid has 20 completed takedowns in 2 fights. He never even wrestled in high school or college either. He just seems to be putting it all together. He's got great cardio. He moves very well, and he mixes in the wrestling, and he's not particularly good at holding people down, which is great because if you can keep getting the takedowns over and over again, that's way more points than the control time that you would get from just holding somebody down. So the rinse and repeat takedowns, this kid looks and fights different, and the gas tank is more. He has the gas tank that's more than capable of pushing the kind of pace that's absolute DraftKings gold. So, and I don't really see a lot of wrestling defense on tape from Martinez, so I have to assume that this is going to be a pace that could potentially even break him late in the fight if Ronnie does this thing where he gets 10 takedowns over 2.5 rounds again and lands a bunch of ground and pound. I think he's going to score a ton of points. That's going to be my cash play for the week. Luke, what do you got for a cash play?
Yeah, I'm actually going to echo you too, Weezy, with Lawrence at 9.3. I think he's just one of the safest plays on the board this week. As a whole, just projected to win the fight at 75% clip. His opponent, Martinez, the 3rd worst ITD line on the slate at sub 15%. It does need to be noted that Martinez is a historic power puncher, early finisher. I get it, but he's also a guy that really needs to get off in the pocket to get in on those type of exchanges to put guys out. Lawrence is pretty good about staying on his bike. He's not going to engage in that type of affair, in and out, lateral movement, forward, backwards. Also, to Weezy's point, the guy's just a solid wrestler. He's going to shoot, attempt, land a ton of takedowns. He's that type of archetype of guy that can just blanket guys over 15 minutes, even some up-down mat return, kind of like a Ricky Simone in some ways. And to Weezy's point as well, the ground has been the historic struggles for Martinez. And I just don't think this fight will be particularly at space for very long. And obviously Martinez just hasn't shown to be any overt grappling threat. So there is a chance, sure, that Lawrence may not finish here, but he is a guy that has 7, 8, 9, 10 potential takedown upside, control upside, non-significant strike upside. And I do think based on his pressure style, even on the feet and on the ground, that will open up finishing sequences of potentially against a potentially gassed Mana Martinez. I think he's a great cash look.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Absolutely. Obviously, it was mine too. So let's go to the favorite value play here. I'll start, you guys. This week, I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez. I'm kind of echoing a lot of what Luke said earlier when he said he was his favorite dog. There's a lot of first-round upside here. Hernandez is very, very explosive early in fights. He moves a lot laterally. He explodes in and out. And when he hits, it hurts. He's got the 5th best first-round prop that's so far available on this slate. And for a guy priced at $7,700, that's really good. Moicano's been finished in all 4 of his pro losses, and 3 of those 4 came by knockout. And we do know that when Alexander Hernandez is at his most dangerous, it's early in the fight. It's when he's still explosive. And if there's a chin that can be cracked by Hernandez, it's absolutely Moicano's. So even though I think Moicano probably does win this fight, I think at $7,700, if you're looking to free up some salary, Alexander Hernandez has some decent upside here. Luke, what are you going to go with for a value play this week?
Yeah, I think we're kind of like flipping all around, but we have still some of the same takes. But I'm going to Dobson at 8.2. Obviously, a ton of questions with the guy, lack of footage, overall fight time. But I think that's partially, a big reason why he's a good value play. He's finished 5 of his 6 pro wins in the first round, knockouts, submissions. A guy appears to be a good athlete, reasonably well-rounded, training under Matt the Immortal Brown. So he's had a solid mentor, over the years. And with Malkoun, I think the guy's just a bit meat and potatoes. Obviously, he had a great game plan against Razak, historic round 1 power puncher. So I think that's where people might pivot from Dobson, and I get it from some perspective, but it also can't be forgot that the guy also died in 18 seconds to Phil Hawes too. And that's just the type of archetype that Dobson can bring. And there's honestly just a very good chance that Dobson is a better wrestler than we've given him credit for. We just really don't know. So when it comes to like value and just general upside at 8.2 on a fight that's, just buried on the prelims, the guy has no game log. The guy can put up an excellent score at 8.2. And I think he's also another one of the fighters that is probably the most live for that 60-second finish bonus.
Yeah, if there's one guy's head that might wind up in the upper deck, it could be Malkoun, man. The way that this guy Dobson hits, dude, it's crazy. It's different. It's just he melts people. So yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you on that one, man. And Monk, what do you got for us here?
I'm going to go with a decently high-priced fighter that I think can, win inside the distance and put up a high score even if he wins by decision, and that is Ronnie Lawrence at 9,300. I know that's a high price. You're like, what kind of value am I going to squeeze out of 9,300? But if he fights the way he's been fighting, the way that Luke described him as to fight earlier, I think Ronnie Lawrence is up for a huge score here against Mana Martinez. He's going to cash out. I mean, what was he? He was 8,600 last time, which is, $700 cheaper. He had a 15.68 value, scoring 100 and almost 35 points in his fight. And I believe, let's see, how long did that one go? It did. Okay. 3rd round knockout. So it went over 12 minutes, just 12 minutes. He put up 134 points, 7.12 per minute, only gave up 1 per minute for a differential of 6. There are some high raw DraftKings points per minute fighters on this card. Ronnie Lawrence is definitely one of them. He puts up over 3 points, if I could find it. So yeah, 3.17 DraftKings points per minute just in takedowns, over a minute in control time, and just under 3 points per minute in striking in his first fight. So he was all over Vince Cachero, and that highlight is tough to watch if you're a Cachero fan. My goodness. So I think Ronnie Lawrence can squeeze out a lot of value even at his high salary, 9,300, over Mana Martinez this weekend. So that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And before we go with the dart throw here, just want to shout out the chat real quick. Here we got Big Show Picks up here and saying, what up, boys? And saying the edits went well, Weezy. We did Combat Court last night. We filmed that on Pub Sports Radio, where we debate who are going to win some of these fights. So check that out on Pub Sports Radio. Look for Combat Court. We got Jack Attack, the #1 handicapper on Bet MMA Tips, in here with us. So thanks for joining us, everybody in the chat here. And we have got the favorite dart throw to go with here. Luke, why don't you start us off? What's the dart throw you're going with this week?
Man, it's tough. Once again, guys, keep in mind, dart throw, low owned. You're praying to the MMA and DraftKings gods here. But I'm going Rojo actually at 6.K. He's finished 14 of his 16 wins. He'll let his hands fly for better or for worse. If anything, it's potentially more of like a DraftKings-based fade into Phillips, who honestly looked god-awful in his last outing against Plivo, where, he threw everything in the kitchen sink. He gassed early. We also saw him slow against Victor Henry back on the regionals, and he did drop the 3rd round to Song Yadong as well. So I do think there are at least a handful of fights now that there may be some consistent cardio issues with Kyler Phillips. Now, do I think he's the better striker in the fight? Yes. Do I think he's the better grappler in the fight? Yes. He probably should be able to just take Rojo down and run him. But when it comes to like a low-owned punt at 6.8, I at least want to kind of know what I'm getting from the guy. And I do know what I'm getting from Rojo here. Like I said, he's going to come forward. He's going to throw his hands. He's got power. He's aggressive. So give me the junkyard dog as a punt on Rojo at 6.8.
You're scaring the hell out of me, man, because I got Kyler Phillips as my ass shaving of the week. And that's the last thing you ever want to hear as a capper is Luke saying he likes the value of your ass shavings opponent. Monk, help me out here for the love of Jah. I've just had my balloon popped. What do you got for me, man?
I mean, guys, this is the definition of a dart throw. No UFC fights, no Dana White Contender Series fights, 3 professional fights. His name, for God's sake, is Blood Diamond. Throw the dart at Blood Diamond. I mean, what are you going to go at this guy? I don't know. Are you looking for me to capping advice like that? You shouldn't be, because I have no idea. This guy's got 3 fights. 3 fights. He's coming in $7,100. So he is pretty cheap. That is, Jeremiah Wells is no joke. He's got one of the craziest Tapology pictures I've ever seen. It literally scared the crap out of you. The one where he's highlighted right in front of the camera with his mouth wide open, eyes like this big. My goodness, I'm gonna have trouble sleeping now that I thought of that. But yeah, I mean, Blood Diamond. What do you want from me? He trains with Izzy. That's my dart throw of the week. Let's just see what happens. Let's put him in, one lineup in a 20 max and see what happens.
Blood Diamond, the dart throw that draws blood. Let's go. My dart throw this week is going to be at this cat if she doesn't shut up. It is going to be I'm going with Matt Schnell as a dart throw this week. Okay, he's the cheapest fighter on the card. Alex Perez has been finished in 5 of his 7 pro losses, if I'm not mistaken. And at only 6,600, Schnell has a really sneaky submission game, and that's how Perez likes to be finished. So as the cheapest fighter on the slate, I think Schnell could be a very sneaky play with high upside that also frees up a ton of salary. We have seen Perez in 5 losses submitted 4 times. Just got guillotined by Davison Figueiredo, and it looked like he was almost out of that guillotine, and Figueiredo just readjusted it and got him anyway. So I figure if there's a Hail Mary play where you could get a first-round submission via triangle choke, it would be Matt Schnell doing it. That's my dart throw of the week. And here we will start giving our you know what? I don't even have it up here what we did last week, you guys. That's my bad.
I got it if you don't have it.
Yeah, why don't you read it for us, Monk, while we figure out. And if you guys have any questions that you want to ask us in the chat, go ahead and start asking while we give you guys our DraftKings lineups here. So, Monk, what did you have for last week's results?
Let's see here. Let me read this. He's not coming back. He's not coming back. Brady will never come back. I am the captain. Oh, sorry. I was reading the DM that you sent me earlier. My bad. DraftKings. Let's see here. Brady finished in 4th place. Jelton Almeida, Bondar, Puna Soriano, Brian Battle Harris, and Jason Witt, 282.31 points. Then we have Luke in 3rd with Bondar, Sean Strickland, Alexis Davis, Barrio, Brian Battle, and Carlston Harris, 297.53. Then we got Weezy, 2nd place, Almeida, Dennis Bondar, Philip Rowe, Gore, Nick Maximoff, great call there, and Carlston Harris, 380.13. And then I actually rebounded somehow from 4th to last. I'm like a rubber band on this show. Shavkat, Sean Strickland, Alexis Davis, Puna Soriano, Michael Trezano, and Steven Peterson, 439.05. So Luke still 1st place for the season. Then we've got myself at 2nd, Weezy less than 4 points behind me, and then Brady just behind Weezy. So it is a close one, guys. Nobody wants to dye their hair blonde. Nobody wants to do a shoey. We're all fighting for it here.
Yeah, right now, Brady, like fine wine, he is in the cellar, and I am maybe like about a quarter of an inch above him right now. So we've both got a little bit of work to do getting back up to where you guys are at. But maybe we can start the work. Maybe we can start the climb this week. Why don't I start us off with my lineup here that I'm going with? And I will go from most expensive to least expensive here. And I'm going to be going with Ronnie Lawrence, Jeremiah Wells, Carlos Ulberg, AJ Dobson, William Knight, and Roxanne Modafferi will be my punt this week, you guys. Luke, what do you got for a lineup for us this week?
I'm going Ronnie Lawrence, Carlos Ulberg, Jared Cannonier, AJ Dobson, Nasrat Haqparast, and Robert Whittaker.
All right. And Monk, what do you got for us here?
I'm going to go with Casey O'Neill, Ronnie Lawrence, Jacob Malkoon, Derrick Brunson, William Knight, and Robert Whittaker, leaving about $1,100 on the table this week.
Wow. Okay. And then I'm going to give you Brady's lineup because I know it's just one fighter different than mine. Brady is going with Ronnie Lawrence, Jeremiah Wells, Carlos Ulberg, AJ Dobson, William Knight, and then he is punting with Robert Whittaker. So let's see if you guys got any questions for us. And I saw it immediately right when I said Modafferi Jack Attack was like, no, but the funny thing is about this is that, I still think that she's going to be around for 3 rounds. I don't actually think I hope that both feet aren't out the door yet. Because if both feet aren't out the door, I think Roxanne lasts for 3 rounds. I think she could get reversals. I think she can get some control time and potentially a takedown or 2. But I don't think, Jack Attack, that she's going to be winning this fight, so don't worry. But he says Modafferi is getting taken out back like old Yeller. That is a very popular opinion this week, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong. And we got my guy, F. Carrillo, always supporting the show, always supporting Pub Sports Radio with a very generous $20 donation. Ring a ding ding, Mr. Carrillo. Thank you so much for the help. Saying humbled for y'all's sacrifices. Much love, Unc. I can't wait for Blonde Weezy, says Jack Attack. That dude, I'm quitting the show. I will quit the show if 1 week before the end of the year it looks pretty much, sealed the vault that I'm going to be having to dye my hair blonde. It would be absolutely awful. Let me see here if we could find some what do we got here? We got Jacqueline saying, yeah, ask a question. How is everybody doing tonight or today? Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm dragging ass, man. If I'm being completely honest, I'm dragging ass. But yeah, we're getting through it. We got the club and sub later tonight, so I'm pulling through.
There you go, man. There you go. And Monk, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. My daughter's dog just got neutered yesterday, so it's been nice not having him going crazy like he usually is. He is a damn good dog before the neutering, and he's still a good dog afterwards. He's just moving a little slower. We've been taking care of him a little bit today, but it has been nice. I'm not going to lie. It's a little bit calmer around the house. So
nice, man. That. We got Max Phillip in here asking, why did everyone sleep on Malcolm Gordon? Was it you who slept on him, Luke? Was it me who slept? I was sleeping on him, man. But what about you?
From like a DraftKings perspective, no. I mean, one thing I will say is that I do think that based on the injury, I do think it was caused from the arm bar that Gordon put up. So I'm going to give the guy his props there because I didn't necessarily think he would be able to get. I knew he was going to threaten some stuff, but I didn't give much merit to that. Obviously, Bondar didn't tap. He did get out of it, and then he posted and framed on his arm, and then his arm broke. So it was still kind of like a memey outcome where I still don't think Gordon really beat him. So, I mean, I don't think there's like a ton to take away from it, but what I will say, props to Gordon, he did lock him up in something tight early. So
yeah, I think he was like 9% owned, something like that. Malcolm Gordon. I think he was the lowest owned play on the card, I think.
I know when I taped that fight, the first thing I was thinking was like, maybe Gordon might be just as good as this guy, but maybe he isn't, and you see him get melted by Sue Maderji and all these other guys where he just quits after he gets hit once. And Bondar had really faced some low levels of competition, so it was easy to think that he could go through there and get an easy win. But yeah, who knows? I think I kind of felt like the armbar did break the arm, and then we just saw the damage when he tried to post up on it. But, there's no way to know for sure. But let's see here. We got Jacqueline has been asking to show us the cat, but the cat already left. The cat just comes in and screams at me. And then when I look at it and ask the cat what the cat wants, the cat leaves. So I cannot show you the cat, and the dog is sleeping in the other room. So no animal showings going on for the rest of the show. But thank you guys for hanging out with us here on Pub Sports Radio. Thank you, F. Carrillo, for the very kind donation. Monk and Luke, why don't you tell us where we can find you guys? We'll start with Monk. Tell them where they can find you. Tell them what you got going on during the week here.
Sounds good. You can find me on YouTube or on Twitter at Monkmatics, and the YouTube channel is Monkmatics as well. I put out a weekly video game theory where I break down all 15 fights, or however many fights there are that week, from a DFS perspective. Very stat heavy, a lot of salary voodoo, a lot of interesting things going on over there, so be sure to check that out. I also did just launch a Patreon today, so patreon.com/Monkmatics. You can get all my stats that I put out. You can get all of my DFS stats, all kinds of things, with more coming for a very low price. So that is what I'm gonna say today. And everybody, enjoy the fights. This is gonna be a banger card. Don't go too heavy on anybody, and I just have a feeling, like Luke said earlier, it might be pretty chalky.
Awesome. And Sean V is saying, which fight on Balls Deep breakdown tonight, Weezy? I was thinking about breaking down that Hernandez Moicano fight. If anybody else has any other suggestions, please let me know. But that one would be a good one to do, and I will be doing that after the guys from the Club and Sub podcast do their thing tonight. And Luke, why don't you tell them about that?
Yeah, guys, Club and Sub podcast on YouTube every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Myself, my boy John, Lags, breaking down all the fights every single week. But actually, my boy Lags will not be with us this week, and will actually be joined by an OG in the game. Mike's MMA Picks will be joining us for the breakdown tonight. So be sure to check us out, guys, here in a couple hours if you guys are interested in hearing our takes from a general betting perspective as well. So once again, guys, cheap plug, Club and Sub podcast. You guys can find me on Twitter, SWR_betting. Like to have some fun on there as well. If you guys are interested in my overall breakdowns, content, bets, patreon.com/SWRbetting. We are off to an okay start to the year, 5 units and up over 100 units over the last couple of years too. So if you're looking for some detail, another person in the opinion, another person in the space, check me out, guys.
And you can find me on YouTube at Uncle Weezy. I do Balls Deep breakdowns of fights. I do a full card breakdown every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Central Time called Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. You can find me on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday night, 6:15 Central Time now for the rest of the year for Stat Diggers. Except for Super Bowl Sunday, we will not be doing a show. We will be moving it to Monday after the Die Hard MMA podcast. But every other Sunday, you can find us on Pub Sports Radio, 6:15 Central Time for Stat Diggers, right here for the DFS show. Uncertainty is asking us, what are your guys' most confident underdog picks this week? From a line, let's say from a line perspective, if you're going to bet one plus money dog this week, Monk, who would it be?
Oh, geez. Let me pull this up. Probably without looking. Okay, now I can look. That Malkoon one, I think he might be plus money. I don't know. I like Brunson. I'm pretty sure he's still plus money, right?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely plus money.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I have my old odds. I didn't update them before the show. That's my bad. But I've only picked 3 underdogs this week, and Derrick Brunson's my favorite. And it sounds like he's a pretty large one still. Computer Monk loves him, so I'm going to go with Derrick Brunson, keeping the streak alive.
What about you, Luke? You got a plus money number that's tickling your fancy this weekend?
I would say from like a picking perspective, I would probably also say Brunson, but from like an actual like best value perspective, I do think it's Whittaker at plus 230 personally. I think he's the underdog with the most meat on the bone.
Yeah, he's one of the best fighters on this card, and you're getting him at plus 230. So yeah, I would take a shot this week at William Knight for some reason. I'm not in love with this guy's game, but I think he's just a very unique and interesting type of challenge that's hard to plan for, especially on short notice. And I think that Grishin was supposed to fight Short Fuse Herman, so this is a much different matchup. Maybe we'll see Knight have some success here and go 6-1 in the UFC. But thank you guys for joining us here on Pub Sports Radio for the DFS show. We appreciate you guys spending your Tuesday night with us. We are going to check out until next week. Luke, Monk, thanks for doing it with us here today, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great night.